This idea of being very people-centered is crucial to us, because when we work with humanitarians and media, and you come in with a security background, you usually don't get it right. You don't understand the culture, you don't understand the willingness to even talk about security.
Quite often for emergency responders, there's no closure
exactly.
to incidents like that. They'll deal with the incident, and then actually it might be quite a while down the road before the reports are written, and quite often they don't come back. So we find that with search and rescue quite often, if we, the loop quite often isn't necessarily as closed, and we know that lack of information, that lack of closure sometimes can lead to stress and can lead to burnout. We're talking about the pandemic, things with the pandemic. We're going into the year 3 now, and there's no closure on some of this for some people. So it's quite normal to be stressed and then recover, but you can re-stress yourselves if you're constantly thinking about what's going on, or there's no break in the cycle or whatever. So rather than having a bit of stress and recovering, which is perfectly natural and actually in some ways arguably is good for us, what's happening is we're having extended periods of stress for certain people working especially first line responders, medical, NHS staff and whatever. But there's no remission.
And if we look at what we have been going through for the last 2 years and now moving into year 3, it is powerlessness. It is an inability to grasp, where do we start from? It's a lack of trust. I think the lack of trust in our governance structures and the fact that we feel we're being left alone and we're being screwed over, to be honest, by many people who feel that.
So we should, as well as being 2 years into response, we should actually be 2 years into recovery. And that recovery should have been helping hands as we went through the response. That hasn't happened. So how do we start that recovery conversation at a point where everybody is tired, and the very same people that have been doing the response for the past 2 years are now going to be expected to do the recovery? And that what we don't do is allow enough longevity to enable that to happen.
What we've got here with the pandemic is actually a trauma for the whole of society.
That social pathogen that COVID has given us in terms of the trauma that it's laid down at our feet. So it is about redefining collective trauma in something that not only is it at a community level or a national level, this is global.
We have seen, it really was like the Black Plague that swept through the elderly homes in Sweden. So many people died, and it was a generation. It's one thing to say that you're working on something that's trust-based, but that doesn't mean that you're generating trust in your response. So we need to separate those two things. Looking at their perspectives and their anger and lack of trust and frustration, that was an issue too, because we had such a cognitive dissonance for people, where on the one hand, you had people dying, you had all the gear on inside the ICUs, but when the nurse stepped outside, she was met by people having a picnic. So this trust-based approach really did cause a lot of dissent, because I think we shouldn't only be talking about trust. I think what we needed, if we take one step back, is that we didn't have a common narrative.